So at this point, inside of our create contact component, what happens when we submit this form? So let's come in here and we'll put Tyler McGinnis and we submit this. The page reloads, and you'll notice what happens in the URL is we have this query parameter now, avatar URL, which is nothing, the name, and the handle. So the way that forms work in browsers natively is they'll grab the names of these input fields and serialize the values inside of them into the URL. So we want to do the same thing, but with JavaScript instead. So we're going to serialize the form and then call up to the app and say, hey, we want to create this contact. And then the app is going to handle saving the contact and adding it to our state. So this form's job is to simply call up with that information. So instead of having the browser take over this form when it gets submitted, let's control that ourselves. So what we'll do is let's add a new prop up here on our form called onSubmit. So this will be invoked when this button is clicked. And so then what we will say is let's call the handle submit method that we can create right now. So inside of handle submit, the very first thing we want to do is we want to tell the browser to prevent default, which is going to prevent it from doing the thing which we just barely saw, which is putting all of this in the URL. So let's go ahead and delete this. And then we can see this in action. So we will enter a name as well as a handle. And then now when we click add contact, nothing is happening, but you'll notice that we're not throwing all of those query params inside of the URL. So now instead of having the browser serialize our form and throw it in the URL, we want to do that ourselves and save it into an object. So what we can do is we can import serialize form, which is going to come from the form serialize package. And then now inside of handle submit, what we can do is let's make a brand new variable called values. And then we want to invoke serialize form, passing it our form, which is going to be coming from event.target. And then we also want to say hash is going to be true, so we will get back that object. Now what we can do is let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like by console.logging it. So let's open up our console. Everything looks good. And then now what we'll do is we will enter in a name. We will enter in a handle. And then we want to add a brand new avatar. And now when we click add contact, you'll see here that we now have an object which represents our form data. So now at this point, instead of just logging the values to the console, what we want to do is we actually want to invoke a function that's going to be passed as a prop to create contact with the specific values. So eventually what's going to happen, and eventually is going to be in the next video, is we are going to pass a prop called onCreateContact. And when we do that, this function is going to expect to receive all of the values. So what we can do is we can say this.props.onCreateContact, passing it all of the values. And then now at this point, create contact is all finished. What it's responsible for is getting all of the form data. And then once the form is submitted, it's just going to call whatever onCreateContact is. And onCreateContact is eventually going to decide what we get to actually do with the form.